So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here. I hope everyone is having a great time networking with fellow software engineers, architects, or whatever it is that brought you here. Now let's get my talk started. I'm going to be speaking about writing engineering strategy. So a little room check. Who here works at a company or has ever seen a strategy document written down? One, two, three, four, five. Okay, almost 10. That's a pretty solid number. I was expecting more closer to zero. That's usually the case. And how many of you wrote one of these documents? Two. All right, all right. But this talk is for everyone, not just for the two that raised their hand. Maybe you can also maybe you'll learn a thing or two. And so before I introduce myself, I want to take a brief moment again to celebrate the amazing milestone that all of you are achieving today. 10 years is a very long time, and being able to drive engagement with the community and organizing events like this is no easy feat. So congratulations to all the organizers and to you, lovely audience here, without which this won't be able to happen. So let me start by introducing myself. My name is Gonzalo Beviglia. I work as a staff software engineer at Box, particularly in the digital signature organization. I focus mostly on the front end and quality initiatives at Box, but my background is pretty diverse in stacks and technologies. I actually started my career writing Java for banking applications, so pretty different from front end. But yeah, some personal facts about me. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I don't come from there right now, not so far away, but yeah, I have been living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands for over 6 years now. I'm a software engineering graduate, and I'm here for two reasons. The first is because I love engaging with meetups of around this size. It's the right amount of people to allow for meaningful conversations after the fact. So please feel free to reach out to me after the talk. I'm especially interested if you have recommendations for what to do in Warsaw. It's my first time here, so far loving it, but I know very little about what to do, where to eat, what to drink. Um, and the second reason I'm here is because Box has offices in Warsaw, in the Warsaw Tower. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I was told it's the largest, tallest building in Europe, so congratulations on that one. Anyways, I'm organizing an internal event there next week, so 2-for-1 trip for me. One last fact about me, like many people born in Argentina, I love to do barbecues and pair it with some wine. Here is proof of my skills, if you could say so. But yeah, enough with the introductions. Let's get closer to some of the juicy bits I have prepared for you. We will go over several things about engineering strategy today. We'll start answering the question, why is it relevant? Why should you listen to me, let's say? What will follow is a definition of what strategy is and what it is not. I will show you an example of a bad strategy following the three elements of what a good strategy should contain. And we will end with an example of what a good strategy looks like. If we have some time, I think we will have enough time. I'll open it up for questions at the end. And if we don't have time, just reach out to me after this. All right, let's start with the why. Why is strategy relevant for an organization and particularly an engineering organization? So in a good scenario, your team, your company, your organization will do good, right? Your product will get more users, you will sell more software, your clients will expand, you integrate with other services, right? Some organizations are able to do this while keeping their headcount as it is, right? But in general, what I mentioned before usually translates to more teams, more people, complexity increasing, objectives start to cascade from the top down. So organizations can have multiple strategies, product, sales, marketing, engineering will be just one of them. And this is where the picture of this rowboat starts to make a little bit more sense. If your company is the boat, we should be all be rowing in the same direction. And strategies help us make sure that our execution efforts compound. Another example I like to use besides the rowing team, which is more visual, is one from the mathematical, let's call it, world. I'm an engineer, so I need these math metaphors here and there. And so a vector can have both magnitude and direction, right? We can say that the magnitude of our vector is the company or team size, or things we can execute upon and deliver. And the direction of this vector will be guided by one or more strategies that we define. If our engineering organization is going into one direction, let's say investing into building new business to consumer, B2C solutions, but the sales organization is more focused in selling B2B features, well, the synergy is just less. When we add the two efforts or directions together, for sure, we get a larger vector, but not as large as it could be. If both orgs are pulling in the same direction, as guided by the same strategy of building and selling more B2B features, the final vector gets larger. And this concept of vector alignment can then be broken down within the organization to teams, subgroups, even within teams itself. We should all be pulling into the similar direction, at least whenever it is possible. So a good strategy can help with this direction alignment. An engineering strategy document can direct a lot of existing or even new technical initiatives into the right direction. It's a very powerful tool when done right, and it helps a lot with solution ideation and execution. But what is strategy, right? If we open a dictionary or we get an old CD of Encarta or something like that, the definition of strategy will look something like the art and science of solving complex and important problems. What I like about this definition is that it mixes both art and science, because you need a lot of creativity to land a good one of these documents, similar to coding in a way, I would say. So I find this to be pretty accurate. But strategy is not a wish list, it is not a vision statement, and it is not a slogan. It is about making ideas happen. A strategy guides you to where you want to be. It bridges the gap between where we are now, where we think we should be, and what we anticipate with our professional knowledge on the industry or the domain that will happen in the middle. And there are two types of strategy, and this will blow your mind, but we have good strategy and bad strategy. Let's establish a base scenario that we'll use for both the bad and the good strategy examples. The product we build has two front-end repositories, two back-end repositories. You can call them monolithic applications, right? Pretty simple. But over the last year, our engineering team grew 3 times, from 50 people to 150 people. The number of features we deliver per month grew twice, from 5 to 10. And the number of production bugs in our backlog also grew 4 times, from 50 to 200. The number of releases we do each week was decreased in half, from 4 to 2 releases per week. That's where we are starting with, right? Let's tackle this situation with a bad strategy. We already start, I'm going to cover kind of the content of the slide if you're not able to read, but we already start off with the wrong foot. The title of the strategy itself is a very specific solution to a hard problem: migration to microservices, right? As we will find out, this bad strategy does not analyze a lot of data. And it starts off by saying that if we migrate our 2 backend repositories, let's say, into 10 microservices, we'll be able to impress our customers, our competitors with our cutting-edge technology. It is also not very specific with time horizons, right? It says that the migration process will take some time, it will take some effort, but it is worth it in the long run, as it will allow us to release more frequently, more independently. This is good because one of our pain points from the scenario is that we are decreasing our release frequency, but this only focuses on the backend side of releases, which we don't even know if that's where the bulk of the problem lies, and it's not stated here anywhere. One of the killer statements of this strategy is saying that the process will be very simple, which makes me wonder if we actually need a strategy at all, if it's going to be a simple problem or solution. But let's continue with it. It follows by saying that the team will use AI to come up with the best separation into domains. I guess we're using a buzzword there. To reduce cost, our existing backends will serve as API gateways, just so we need less changes on the front-end side. And our new microservices will have 100% unit test coverage, and the database will be shared across all services, again, to reduce, simplify communication, let's call it. A strategy like this one might include a diagram of where we are now, 2 on a database, let's say, followed by a diagram of where we want to be. Besides the level of detail, this might be a good enough diagram, but the strategy in general is missing a lot of information on how we landed into the actual solution. Without those elements, we cannot know if there's a better way to course correct, right? A good strategy will contain 3 elements: a diagnosis of the situation, a guiding policy to align on trade-offs, and coherent actions to guide our execution. The first element is the diagnosis. In the diagnosis, we will identify and analyze the challenges and opportunities we face. We want to understand the nature and the causes of the situation. For a good diagnosis, we can use data, insights, or even frameworks. Data is the information we can collect about the situation. Insights are the interpretations we can make on the data we collect, and we can use frameworks to kind of organize and visualize the insights that we gather. A good diagnosis should be clear, concise, credible. It should answer the questions: what is the problem? Why does it matter? And how do we know that there's a problem and that it matters? We should avoid also being overly optimistic, which is not a realistic assessment. For example, assuming everything will go according to plan, or that there are no uncertainties. More often than not, both things happen. The second element of a good strategy is the guiding policy. A good guiding policy will define the direction, the scope, and the logic behind your strategy. You need to use sources of power, of leverage, and of focus. Sources of power are maybe the strengths or advantages that you have or you can create within your organization, like skills or resources that you need to hire or already have. Leverage is the ability to amplify the impact of your actions. And we use focus to concentrate our efforts and resources on the most critical or promising areas. The third element of a good strategy are the coherent actions. This is where we specify the steps, the tasks, the resources that are required to execute on the actual strategy. The coherent actions can be put together by using technical specifications, allocating resources, making decisions, both technical and non-technical ones. And a good set of coherent actions should be clear, they should be feasible, we should be able to make them happen, and they should be enforced too. It should answer the questions: what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And also, who is responsible to do so? We should also avoid making our coherent actions disconnected. Disconnected actions are isolated, fragmented, or inconsistent. They do not support maybe the guiding policy, or they undermine each other. As an example, if our guiding policy favors quality over speed, and one action is that every merge to our main branch will be automatically deployed to production, well, we're just going on the opposite side of the quality versus speed trade-off that the guiding policy sets. So let's go back to our original scenario. Remember, we had 2 front-end repositories, 2 back-end repositories, and essentially we grew in team size. Our speed of delivery also was improved, but our release frequency and quality are kind of lagging behind a little bit. Let's go over this scenario with a good strategy using the elements we've seen so far. Again, you don't need to read this, and if you want the actual example, I can share it. I'll leave my mail in my last slide. But let's start with the diagnosis, right? Um, if I were to write a document like this one, the title would be something like high quality in a growing engineering organization, which encapsulates a little bit the problem at hand. The first point mentions we have two business lines. We have 80% of our revenue coming from our B2B business and 20% of our revenue coming from our B2C side of things. And we expect this to remain the same. The second point breaks down our 150 engineering person organization into high-level roles. It also raises the fact that we are cash flow positive this way. Um, and the last 2 points actually take a stab or analyze the problem we see in the scenario. It says that the data from our developer productivity survey shows that most of the reduction in the release frequency comes from the fact that the two monolithic front-end applications are blocked because bugs are found later in the process and the whole release does not go through, which is kind of a very good insight. The last point highlights the bug situation and its impact. Our B2B customers are starting to get concerned about the quality of the product and they expect what they are paying for. So that was our diagnosis of the situation, extending on the scenario a little bit. In the guidance policy, we start by choosing one side of a very usual trade-off. We will favor quality and independence over speed and simplicity, and we are willing to invest on it. We want the concepts of deployments and releases to be distinguishable. And we want to keep the organization size stable until our data shows that we are in a better situation than our original scenario. The second point attempts to automate issue detection before they are released and before they block other teams too. Each feature should include a testing plan. Each testing plan should cover the new features and do regression testing or on our existing product, right? We also want higher levels of testing, not to rely so much on unit tests and its coverage. And the third point about our guiding policy is about being proactive, right? We want to leverage our observability stack to make sure we discover issues before our customers need to call us on the phone to mitigate the risk of losing our reputation in this side of the business. In case there's an issue that goes undetected, which it usually happens, that's what we like to do as engineers, a postmortem of the issue should be written and reviewed. Now, onto the actions themselves. The first one, and piggybacking on favoring independence, we'll set up a team of 3 engineers that will help the teams split the 2 monolithic applications into independently releasable ones. To address the distinction between deployment and release, we will integrate a feature flipping solution into both sides of the stack, and every new feature or large refactor can and should be incrementally rolled out and released to our customer base, not all at once. We follow with the introduction of 2 new testing layers, one for the client, maybe with the network mocked, and one for our API layer. And the last 2 points build upon the productivity side of the guiding policy. Each team will have to contribute 3 charts to a shared SLA dashboard where we'll see API error rate, API latencies, maybe JavaScript errors that are happening in the browser. And the last point establishes how postmortems will be reviewed. This postmortem should include action items to prevent and detect future occurrences of the same issue we're encountering, and every team needs to be represented in the review. That's our strategy in a nutshell, what I would consider a good one for this scenario. And we are able to provide a data-driven diagnosis, drive direction through a guiding policy, and outline execution and resources in the coherent actions. So now that we've gone through the bad and the good strategy, I want to leave you with some thoughts on topics that are pretty relevant when writing engineering strategy or when reviewing or reading somebody else's documents. When doing strategy, any kind of it really, make sure you're thinking about risks. If we're just getting started with something like feature flips, Is it more risky to buy a product or to build it ourselves? When will one be ready versus the other? What is the cost of a yearly subscription versus staffing a team to build it? And also, how certain are we of all the answers we're giving? When thinking about these decisions, keep in mind the image of this barbell that won't work very well in a gym, but for this thought experiment is good enough. You want to be exposed, you want most of your important decisions to carry a low level of risk on the left side of the slide, but still you want to be exposed to some level of unbound positive risk. In our previous strategy, we had 4 actions that erred really on the side of being cautious, and one of them aimed at re-architecting our whole front-end approach, really, which are 4 actions of low risk and one with higher risk, but also a lot of potential upside. The second thought is that in our industry, exploration usually means experimenting with a new approach, right? And especially in a meetup like a JavaScript meetup like this one, we get new JavaScript tools almost weekly, quarterly, monthly that we can experiment with. And in some ways, exploration is the opposite of standardization. So if you're going to allow for exploration in your organization, you should have clear criteria for adoption beyond the experiment. An exploration should either proceed to adoption or stop because we have data to prove it wrong. The technology of approach is proven out positively, it should lead to a migration from the previous approach to the new one. If the technology does not live up to its promise, the experiment should be fully deprecated. Standardization is so powerful that we should default to consolidating on few platforms and invest heavily in their success. Many could challenge this, but this is my view, my thought. However, we should still pursue explorations that offer at least one order of magnitude or similar over the existing technology. I think that's a good approach. The last thing I want to leave you with is to think about the audience in general when writing or thinking strategically. In general, strategy documents are written with 2 very different audiences in mind. The first one would be your management chain, your executives, the CTO, your directors, both product, engineering, marketing, any kind of director. These documents are a structured way of discussing long-term problems and making sure people are in agreement with the problem, the solution, and the resourcing and investment needed to actually solve it. And the second audience are the engineers that will be impacted by the strategy that you write. These documents should be transparent, accessible to all, and written in a way that it guides decision-making during execution. Keep both of these audiences in mind when choosing the language and level of details to include. That's it for me. I'm leaving my email in case somebody wants to follow up. I'll be around also for more questions or just chatting or listening your awesome recommendations about this lovely city. And if we have time, we'll open it up for questions.
First of all, thanks for the great presentation. It was really clearly delivered, so I enjoyed it very much. Now, I'm wondering about the last point, which is the audiences, but also there comes the silent second part of the people involved, which is the authors or the author themselves. So we saw the why, the what, and the how, the 3 essential steps. But one thing I'm quite interested in is the who. I don't mean the band, but do you need to be a team leader, a CTO, or does the document need to come from a position of authority? Or is it something that can be produced by a self-governed agile team?
That's a very good question. My answer would be, I think it depends on what you're trying to target in your strategy. If you are one team, let's say, but you want to change how the whole company does engineering, I mean, in my opinion, anybody should be able to write it, present it, and have the opportunity to defend it. It's just that in your scope of work, you have less opportunities to be seated at the table where those conversations happen. So, but if you have the willpower, I think that it's still possible and should be possible for people to raise you up for success and make your voice heard. Um, that's my opinion. If you have more, let's say, official authority or power, well, you have just better, first, a better vision over the overarching organization. So you have more data points and you can leverage more people than maybe if you are working in a single team. But I think, um, follow me with this answer, but I think you need some sort of authority to drive such a document, but it doesn't need to be formal authority. You don't need to have a specific title, be the tech lead, the team lead, the manager, the director, or whatever. But I think it's pretty important, mostly to make sure the strategy gets carried out, that people see you as somebody that knows what you're talking about. If I don't know, I know nothing about medicine. If I were to present the strategy for a hospital, how you should do surgery, well, I could deliver pretty well, but nobody will kind of trust me. So I think that level of authority can be built up, but it's also easier to carry it around if you can just say, hey, you know what, this is a strategy, I'm the CDO, we're going this direction. You might be challenged, but it's easier to carry it out. So I would say both are possible, and I hope your ideas are listened to.
Okay, so we have the strategy now, and the question is, what next? How do you track its execution? What do you do when it doesn't work out? And should it be part of the strategy to write the way we track it?
So I think one key point on strategy that maybe in this simple example might not have been so clear is how do you enforce all the actions that you say you're going to do. Enforcing could be, well, we plan for it, we execute on it, we deliver it on it, but enforcing could also mean, hey, if we say we're going to, I don't know, do a postmortem every time we have an incident and somebody does not do it, well, why? Why are you going against what we said we would do? I think in this sense, depending also on the granularity and the specificity and the altitude of your strategy, it mostly helps with making sure you don't have the same discussion over and over. Let's say one strategy could be we're moving into microservices, or one strategy could be stop it with the microservices, we're going back to the monolith, and you kind of document it with a strategy, how you're going to do it, how you're going to plan for it, execute. But what it helps is you won't be having, or you shouldn't be having that same conversation of, oh, should I build a microservice or extend the monolith with every single substantial new project that you need to build. Hope that answers part of the question, but it's the other side would be it's up to mostly the people kind of sponsoring the strategy, the writer, the people that are backing it, which are maybe managed, depending again on the altitude, might be just managers, might be directors, might be the CDO. Those are the people accountable on making sure what you said you were going to do, well, start doing it, put it in Jira, put it in Trello, whatever you're using, but start doing, and I want to see some deliveries, results. So I would say there's two sides of it.
Thank you, Gonzalo.
Warsaw.